Hi, I'm Vivian. Nice to meet you. Before I tell you my story, kindly hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like to know where you're from. Now let's dive in. It started with the bruise on my cheek. I told the cashier at the grocery store that I'd slipped on the kitchen floor, smacking my face against the counter. She nodded politely, but I could see it in her eyes. She didn't believe me. No one ever says anything, though. People don't want to get involved. Anthony was charming in public. Everyone thought I'd won the lottery with him. The handsome high school football hero turned respected local contractor. But behind our front door, that charm could twist into something dark in a split second. That night, I made spaghetti for dinner. Too much salt in the sauce. That's what set him off. He shoved the plate, the sauce splattering across the tablecloth. "You can't even get dinner right," he hissed, his voice low enough so Liala, sitting in the living room with her homework, wouldn't hear. But she always heard. My little girl noticed everything. I cleaned up the mess in silence, my hands trembling. I learned the rules. Don't talk back, keep your head down, wait for the storm to pass. But storms in our house didn't just pass, they lingered. That night, after Anthony fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the bruise in the reflection of the darkened window. I thought about my life before him, the art classes I loved, the friends I'd lost touch with, the freedom I didn't even know I'd traded away until it was gone. The next morning, I caught Liala staring at me while I made her breakfast. "Mom, did Dad do that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart stopped. "No, sweetheart. I told you," I slipped. She didn't believe me either. Her eyes were too wise for 9 years old. A week later, I got a call from her school. "Mrs. Taylor," said Mrs. Collins, her teacher. "I just wanted to check in. Is everything okay at home? Liala's been drawing pictures lately. They all concern me." When I met her after school, Mrs. Collins laid out the crayon drawings on her desk, a small figure standing between two taller ones, the tall man's arms raised, his mouth open wide, the smaller woman cowering. The captions were short and chilling. "Stop hurting Mom." I didn't know what to say. My instinct was to protect Anthony's secret. That's what fear does. It locks you in. But Mrs. Collins didn't push. She just said, "If you or Liala ever need help, I'm here." That night, after Anthony stormed out because dinner was 5 minutes late, Liala came to me, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mom," she said softly, "I think I can help." Her words startled me. She was a child, my child. I didn't want her anywhere near the danger that lived in our house. But there was something in her eyes, a quiet determination I'd never seen before. "What do you mean, help?" I asked. "I can show people what Dad's really like. But I'll need help from Grandpa. And Mrs. Collins." I froze. My father, retired Colonel Robert Greene, had never liked Anthony. They'd barely spoken since the wedding. If he knew the truth, I wasn't sure what he'd do, or if I was ready for the fallout. But Liala had a plan. And as I listened to her whisper it in my ear, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Liala's plan was bold. Too bold for a 9-year-old, I thought. But she spoke about it with the calm precision of someone twice her age. "Grandpa has an old camera," she whispered that night in her room. The door locked, the sound of Anthony's truck still fading down the street. Mrs. Collins said it's okay to use her phone sometimes at school, if it's for something important. I stared at her. "Liala, this isn't a game. If your father finds out." She cut me off with a look I didn't think a child could give, steady, unwavering. "Mom, if we don't show people, nothing's going to change." That was the truth I'd been avoiding for years. I'd convinced myself I could endure it, that I could protect her by absorbing the worst of him myself. But the bruise on my cheek, the drawings on Mrs. Collins' desk, they told another story. 2 days later, my father called. His voice was gruff, as always, but there was something else there, concern. "Vivian," he said, "I saw Liala's latest school project online. She wrote an essay about protecting your family from danger. What's going on?" I hesitated. My father wasn't the kind of man you lied to easily. He'd served 30 years in the army, had a radar for dishonesty, and Anthony's name had always made his jaw tighten. Still, telling him meant crossing a line I wasn't sure I could come back from. "I can't talk now, Dad," I said. but maybe we can visit soon. That Friday, Liala slipped a folded note into my coat pocket before school. Later, in the laundry room, I found it. Mrs. Collins says Grandpa will help. Just say yes. I didn't remember saying yes. But the following Sunday, I found myself driving to my father's small house on the edge of town. Anthony was on a weekend hunting trip, a rare window. Grandpa listened without interrupting. I told him everything. The shouting, the shoves. The nights I'd pretended it was my fault. My voice broke when I admitted that Liala had been my shield more times than I'd been hers. When I finished, he sat back, his hands clasped. We'll do this smart. We'll get evidence. Not just stories. Proof he can't talk his way out of. That's when the plan truly began. Grandpa produced a small recording device from a desk drawer. Slip it into the pocket of your robe. Keep your phone nearby. Anything he says or does, we document it. Liala will have her own role, away from danger. I didn't like the idea of her being involved at all. But Grandpa was right. No one listens without proof. And Anthony was careful. He saved his worst for when no one was around. Over the next week, small pieces fell into place. Mrs. Collins discreetly gave Liala a tablet with a camera, saying it was for a school project. Grandpa showed her how to hide it in plain sight, between books on a shelf, inside a tissue box with a small hole cut in the side. The first recording came sooner than I expected. Anthony came home late, the smell of whiskey on his breath. Dinner had gone cold. His voice rose, sharp and venomous, his hand gripping my arm so tight I knew it would bruise. I kept my face turned toward the kitchen window, heart pounding, while the little recorder in my robe pocket captured everything. When it was over and he'd stomped upstairs, I locked myself in the bathroom. I played back the audio. His threats filled the tiny speaker, each word a nail in the coffin of the life I'd been living. Liala knocked softly. Did we get it? She whispered. I nodded, tears burning my eyes. We got it. It was the first real piece of the puzzle. But I knew it wouldn't be enough on its own. The first recording was like a spark, tiny, but dangerous. Once we had it, Grandpa said we needed more. Enough to strip Anthony's good guy mask clean off. For days, I moved through the house like I was walking a tightrope. Every smile, every nod, every yes dear felt like an act I had to perfect. Anthony had a way of sniffing out even the smallest shifts in mood, and I couldn't afford to let him suspect anything. But even with all my caution, he noticed. One night, while I was cleaning up after dinner, he leaned against the counter, studying me with those sharp, assessing eyes. You've been different lately, he said slowly. Quieter. I forced a shrug. Just tired. His gaze lingered for a long, uncomfortable moment before he smirked. You're always tired, aren't you, Viv? That smirk stayed in my head for hours after he went to bed. It wasn't playful. It was the look of a man who'd just spotted a crack and was deciding whether to split it wide open. Liala kept her part of the plan going in the background. When Anthony was at work, she'd set up her little projects, a coloring station at the coffee table that just happened to be in range of the hidden tablet camera, or a doll tea party staged perfectly to watch the living room. The second recording came after he accused me of wasting money because I'd bought a pair of shoes for work. He knocked the shoebox off the table, the shoes spilling onto the floor. His voice dripped with venom, accusing me of being ungrateful, selfish, useless. I didn't argue. I just kept my phone nearby, catching every word. Later, when Liala hugged me before bed, she whispered, We're building a wall, Mom. Brick by brick. But the wall we were building came with its own risks. One afternoon, Anthony came home early. I'd left the recorder in my robe pocket and my phone charging in the kitchen. I heard the garage door before I could hide anything. He walked in, eyes darting around the room like he was trying to catch something moving. Where's Liala? He asked. At the library for a reading club, I said. My voice stayed calm, but my pulse pounded in my ears. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped close, too close, like he was trying to read my face. You sure about that? The air between us felt like a thin glass sheet. One wrong word and it would shatter. I'm sure, I said evenly. He backed off, but I caught him glancing around the living room before going upstairs. That night, I double-checked all our hiding spots. This tissue box camera, The little recorder. Everything was still in place, but for the first time, I realized how easily it could all be destroyed. The third piece of evidence came unexpectedly. Liala had been working on a school interview project, and Mrs. Collins helped her set up a Zoom call for homework. I knew it was really with Grandpa, and I slipped in at the end. He told her exactly how to frame questions that might draw Anthony into saying something revealing, even if he thought it was harmless. It worked. The very next day, while helping Liala with her math homework, Anthony ranted about how kids these days didn't know discipline. His voice grew sharp, his tone meaner, until he used words that made my stomach twist. The camera caught all of it. We now had audio, video, patterns. Grandpa said it was becoming a case. But Anthony was watching me closer than ever. I could feel it. He'd started to come home earlier, linger in rooms he normally ignored, and even follow me into the kitchen when I got a drink of water. One night, as I loaded the dishwasher, he said, almost casually, "You know, secrets have a way of coming out, Viv. And when they do, someone always pays for them." I didn't respond. I just slid another plate into the rack and prayed he hadn't already figured out the truth. By mid-November, the air outside was crisp and cold, but inside our house, it felt like walking through a field of tripwires. Anthony's suspicion had grown sharp enough to cut. He still hadn't confronted me outright, but every question he asked felt like it had a hook in it. He'd glance at my phone, pause too long in the hallway, and his eyes kept flicking toward the places where our hidden devices were, as if he could smell the secrets we'd tucked away. Grandpa said we were almost ready. "One more strong piece of evidence," he told me over the phone, "and we'll bring it to the police." Thanksgiving might be the perfect moment. Plenty of witnesses. No way for him to twist it. The thought of confronting Anthony in front of his family terrified me. They'd never believed anything bad about him. To them, he was the dependable son, the good provider. I was the quiet wife who didn't come around enough. They had no idea what really happened behind our closed door. Liala, on the other hand, was fearless. "If they see it for themselves, they can't pretend it's not real," she told me while we packed groceries one evening. "And Grandpa will be there." That week, the last recording fell into our hands almost by accident. Anthony came home from work in a foul mood, stomping through the house looking for something to complain about. The roast I'd made was too dry, the mail too disorganized, and apparently I was too lazy to do anything right. I let him vent while my robe pocket recorder quietly documented every word. The moment his voice crossed into a threat, subtle but unmistakable, I knew we had what we needed. The next day, I met Grandpa at a diner on the edge of town, Liala, at a friend's house, but really with Mrs. Collins, reviewing the footage. Grandpa didn't even finish his coffee before saying, "This is enough. We'll let him hang himself in front of everyone." The plan for Thanksgiving was set. Liala would bring her tablet, loaded with the clearest clips, audio and video, ready to play. Grandpa would be at the table, sitting close to her. At the right moment, she'd accidentally start the playback, loud enough for the whole room to hear. But in the days leading up to it, Anthony's behavior became erratic. Sometimes he'd be overly sweet, making my favorite breakfast or asking about my day like he used to when we first met. Other times, he'd lash out over nothing, his voice like a whip. The night before Thanksgiving, he sat on the couch watching TV, but I could feel his eyes on me. "You've been busy lately," he said, almost conversationally. I kept my voice neutral. "Just getting ready for tomorrow." His lips curved into that smirk I hated. Family dinners are funny. Everyone pretending, smiling, until something ruins it. I forced a laugh, but inside, my heart was pounding. Did he know? Was he already planning his own move? Later, as I tucked Liala into bed, she squeezed my hand. "Tomorrow's the day, Mom. We're going to be free." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to picture us on the other side of this nightmare, living in a small apartment where I could paint again, where she could sleep without flinching at the sound of the front door. But as I lay in bed that night beside Anthony's sleeping form, I couldn't shake the feeling that Thanksgiving wasn't just going to be a turning point. It was going to be a knife's edge, and we were all about to step onto it. Thanksgiving morning was bright and cold, the kind of day where you can see your breath in the air. Inside Anthony's parents' house, The smell of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and pine candles wrapped around us as soon as we walked in. His family greeted us warmly, hugging Anthony, patting me on the back, telling Liala how much she'd grown. They had no idea. No one ever does. Grandpa was already there, sitting at the far end of the long dining table. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, steady, reassuring, before he leaned down to give Liala a hug. I knew the tablet was already tucked into her backpack, the clips queued up, the volume ready. Dinner started like every other holiday. Small talk, passing dishes, the clink of silverware. Anthony played the role perfectly, laughing at his brother's jokes, telling a story about work, keeping his arm casually draped across the back of my chair. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was the perfect husband. Halfway through the meal, his mother asked me how things were going at home. I opened my mouth to give the standard "we're doing well" answer, but Anthony beat me to it. "Viv's been great," he said smoothly. "Always keeping the house perfect." "I'm lucky, aren't I?" Something in his voice, the faintest edge, made my stomach tighten. He was baiting me. That's when Liala moved. She shifted in her seat, accidentally bumping her backpack. The zipper slipped, and the tablet slid halfway out. She caught it, turned it on, and before anyone could say a word, Anthony's voice filled the room. It was one of the clearest recordings we had. His tone was sharp, cold, dripping with contempt. "You can't do anything right, Vivian. Pathetic. You're lucky I even put up with you." The room went still. Forks hovered in midair. His mother's smile froze. Then the second clip played, the threat. Low, quiet, but unmistakable. "One day, Viv, you're gonna push me too far, and you'll regret it." Anthony's chair scraped back so hard it nearly toppled. "Turn that off," he barked, his voice the same as in the recordings. But it was too late. Grandpa stood, his voice calm but hard as steel. "Sit down, Anthony." Anthony's glare shifted to him. "You stay out of this, old man." But Grandpa didn't flinch. "You've been caught. On camera. On tape. More than once. The police will be interested in hearing it." Anthony's father muttered something under his breath. His mother's hand was shaking so badly she set her fork down. Liala sat perfectly still, her chin high, eyes locked on her father like she'd been preparing for this moment her whole life. Anthony started toward her, and that's when Grandpa moved, quicker than I'd ever seen him at his age. He stepped between them, his hand up. Not another step. I don't remember calling the police, but I remember the sound of my own voice on the phone, steady, clear, certain. The officers arrived within 20 minutes. By then, Anthony's parents were no longer defending him. They'd seen too much. The arrest was quiet but firm. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists, his eyes darting between me and Liala. "You'll regret this," he said. But for the first time, I didn't feel fear when he spoke, just relief. After he was gone, the room stayed silent for a long moment. Then Grandpa put his arm around my shoulders and said, "You're free now." In the weeks that followed, I filed for divorce. I found a small apartment with big windows, and I pulled my old easel out of storage. Liala decorated her new room with drawings. Bright ones this time, full of sunlight and open doors. She still talks to Mrs. Collins, and sometimes to other kids who've seen things they shouldn't. She tells them the same thing she told me that first night. If you don't show people the truth, nothing will change. And every time I hear her say it, I realize she didn't just save me. She taught me how to save myself. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like and hit subscribe. You will also enjoy other stories on AJ Family Drama. Until next time, bye.